How long does it take to master accounting? This is a question often asked, but one not easily answered. Here's why. To master something, the first step is to define what it is we're trying to master and then think about the steps involved to master it. If we think about accounting, we can think of it as a subsection of, say, business, or a subsection in some cases of law. If we think about business in general, we're talking about something that is way too big for any one person to master. The concept of business, how people can use the term business, could change from person to person, but the concept of business in general is way too large for anybody to master. The term business in a broad sense can mean any type of business transaction or any study that can then be applied to a business setting. And that could include economics, that could include behavioral studies, things like psychology and sociology. And those, of course, are huge topics in and of themselves, and no one individual can really learn or master all of those topics. You may say that, what about getting a degree, some type of degree in business? Doesn't that show that you have mastery? And it doesn't necessarily show that you have mastery. It shows that you have achieved a certain level of skills to the point that you can go through the testing process or whatever requirements to show or demonstrate those set of skills. But a business program is usually going to be a broad view of all the topics within business. What's thought to be most important? What's thought to be the key components or the key areas of further study? To continue on to business, typically we would then go to work, or then we would have further studies within business, which would then specialize on a specific component within business. So we need some type of specialization at some point. From a legal perspective, you can think of the same thing. If your goal is to learn law, we then have to break that down to smaller components at some point, because the study of law is way too large to learn all of law. And again, we might say, well, what if we get some kind of certification or degree in law? Doesn't that show that we know all of law? No, that's not true that we know all of law. It has the same kind of thing with a business degree. It shows that we have mastered certain skills and have certain competencies in order to demonstrate that within typically very broad areas of law. And then once we go into practice, we would then specialize, and or we would specialize from a study standpoint into a particular area of law. Now, we can think of accounting as one form of specialization. Business is huge. We could then say, how about we go into accounting, and that helps us to specialize accounting as a subset of business, or you can think of it as a subset of law in some cases. Things like taxes are a subset of law. You can think of, in some cases, human resources and things like that. Laws obviously are part of things that we deal with in accounting, especially in payroll type of accounting. So there's going to be a lot of overlap, but the concept is that we could then go from business, very, very broad, to specializing in some area, possibly accounting, which is narrowing things down. This is great. This is going in the right direction, but the problem is that accounting is still huge. To look at accounting in general, the topic is way too big for any one person to master all of accounting, or at the very least, if we're looking to master accounting, we may want to think of that as one of our overarching or long-term objectives, not an immediate goal. We don't really want to focus on learning all of accounting just as our immediate goal, but might want to think of it as something that we want a broad knowledge of as a long-term goal. We'd like to learn a lot of different areas and how all the different accounting fields tie together more as a long-term type of goal. Or in other words, we might have an overarching view of how different fields fit together, and that can be a goal, but we're not really going to know the detail of all these different areas of accounting because that would take too much time. We might have a long-term goal to get a better understanding of the different fields in accounting as we progress. And if we take that perspective, it would be similar to a perspective of, say, a business having a mission statement or a vision, which would be different than the particular goals to achieve that. The vision should be something way out into the future that you may not ever get to. It's something that's almost unachievable, something that you can kind of strive for, not something that you expect to achieve anytime in the immediate future, because viewed in that sense, it could be a discouragement rather than a benefit, something that you are aiming for, something that's going to be inspiring you to keep moving forward. So we want to think of it as a long-term goal, the long-term mission, and then break that down into smaller goals. We can think of that in the same format as learning basically all of accounting or all the details within accounting. We want to say, okay, that's the long-term goal possibly, and then break that down into its components along the way, having achievable goals along the way. In a similar way that a business would set goals in order to achieve a mission, a long-term type of goal. So if the mission for a business, for example, that long-term goal that we don't really expect to get to but are always shooting for, always having something to aim at, is to dominate a particular market or something like that. That's a generic goal, but a goal such as that, then that would be the long-term vision, something that's way out in the future. It's a goal in a sense, but it's not one that we expect to achieve. It's something that we're going to break down and always be looking towards. And then we can set up our goals to get to that particular long-term vision or long-term goal, like getting a quality team, hiring good employees, profit goals along the way, advertising goals. And as we do this, we can set up our influence in our particular market, hopefully increasing it until we get to that mission goal, which again may never be achievable, but it's something that we're always striving for. If we don't have a vision or mission, of course, way out into the future, the danger is that we actually achieve it, which means that we have nothing to do anymore. So we want to have a mission, a vision that's going to be way out there, whatever it may be, whether it be learning accounting or whether it be getting general knowledge or whether it be a particular job or something. But we want to have something way out there so that once we get there, we basically never get there. It's always something that we can look towards, that we're going towards, but still get achievement from, and therefore kind of happiness along the way of achieving the goals along the way. That's going to be the basic kind of model of a business plan and a vision versus the goals that we're going to set up to get there. If we think about that from the accounting, if we think about accounting, just general knowledge, knowing most of accounting or all of accounting, or having a good grasp of a huge different types of accounting, because accounting is huge, a lot of different areas, then we want to set up smaller goals along the way. And these are just some examples. These are big goals along the way. So some of these are going to be big goals. So something like a degree in accounting, not something that we would have to get. You don't necessarily need a degree. You might have a different goal. But if you go with the degree, that's a pretty well set up path. The degree path for accounting is pretty well set up. So if you go to that goal, that could be a goal. Now you could set this as a goal, kind of a long-term goal, and then of course break that down into shorter goals so that you can achieve the shorter goals and just basically focus in on enjoying whatever it is you're going to, focusing in on the shorter goal at that current point, because that's the goal that you're looking to achieve for, and that'll make your focus a lot easier and make it more fun to focus in on that short-term goal. Note, however, that if you choose this route, that you also want to have some type of mission, some type of goal that's going to be beyond the graduation point, because you do hope that as you achieve your short-term goals, you will achieve this more longer-term goal. And once you do, you don't want that to stop us. We don't want that to stop us from then continuing forward. We need to keep on having more goals after we reach that point and do something after that point. So it's good to then have a longer term goal, and that may be to continue on to get a job, possibly in public accounting or in taxation, public accounting often being the course after a degree, because that could lead towards the CPA in a bit more easy or straightforward way, depending on the qualifications and the state we are in. However, we don't need to necessarily even get the degree in order to look for the job and get the accounting skills in order to look for a job. We could pick up the accounting skills in other ways, such as experience, such as putting together our resources, and then go look for the job. There's not one set course. The benefit of going the degree route and then to work and then possibly to the CPA is it's more defined. As you go through that process, it's a well-defined process. If we go to some other process, if we learn accounting through work, then we have to chart our course, and that course will differ from the standard course that we would think of from a degree route. The degree route is much more standardized. If we go some routes other than the degree through just experience, then we're going to have some different kind of course that we're going to have to decide what it will be and chart that course. Doable, but takes more planning. Note that getting a job is also going to be some goal that we hope to achieve at some point in the future. We want to set smaller goals to get to that point of getting the job. Once we get it, however, we still want to have some kind of mission that's going to be out beyond that, possibly learning accounting in general, possibly going to the CPA exam or getting some other credential to keep on learning, to keep on making things interesting, to keep on having goals. Also note that we may not go to a CPA firm or a tax firm. We might then go to a business and use our accounting skills to start our business and be able to use the accounting skills within it. or to work for a business and working more on kind of general ledger accounting to enter the transactions and work in the accounting department within a business. There's many different areas that we can work within accounting department within a business. Again, another step along the way might be more of a longer term goal, but still just a goal. Once we have achieved that, we're going to still want to make plans and continue on past that. Another goal may be to become a certified public accountant, and this would typically follow this path where we get the degree and then go to work at a public accounting firm and then look to get the CPA. But this isn't something that necessarily doesn't have to be the path that is taken. It's quite possible to learn accounting on the job, work at a job within the accounting department, and be perfectly happy with that, and still continue with goals later on, which could include learning more components of the accounting and building your skills up, whether it be in the accounting department or some other area. In that sense, the learning of accounting and related business skills is always something that we can go towards and continue learning within. It's not something we're ever going to achieve, but we can't hold it out as something that we always have to work towards. And that's a good thing, that we can never achieve accounting and we can never learn everything within. It's a huge topic, so that's good because it's something that we can always work within. If we were to learn everything, whether it be in accounting or anything, we run into the problem of having achieved our vision, or achieved our ultimate goal, and that's a problem because then we have nothing more to do other than to set up another goal. So the fact then that accounting is a topic that if we start to learn and work within is not an area that we will ever master, then is actually a good thing, because that allows us a lot of room to continue on with it and continue setting up short-term goals and going through the process of learning and achieving those short-term goals within that long-term goal. Note that setting those short-term goals is a difficulty for most people. I know it is for me. I've had difficulty setting up those short-term goals, and I still have difficulty setting up those short-term goals, knowing what amount of material or what type of thing would be appropriate for a short-term goal as opposed to a long-term goal. And if you're looking at the route of not going through a standard degree system, be aware that that is possible, but it does take more planning. In order to be successful in that route within accounting fields, you'd have to be more specific in terms of what your goals are, more specialized in what you want to do, and more focused. In many cases, that may actually be a benefit as well, because that's a huge skill to develop, to be able to set those goals. And if you're able to actually chart your own course and set what you want to do, then you'll be developing those skills to set goals and think about what is an appropriate short-term goal, what kind of things can you achieve, how can you set the long-term goal and set up what your ultimate vision is. Whether we are an accounting student or someone that works in accounting or someone that wants to learn accounting for some future goal, whether that be their business or to work in the field of accounting, the format for learning accounting concepts is becoming more and more standardized. In other words, if you want to just learn the accounting concepts, whether you are a student that you want to supplement your courses, or you want to look forward into the future, or if you want to learn accounting on your own, the format with which you can do so is fairly standardized, and that would typically go from first learning the financial accounting, financial transactions, what it means to be a financial transaction, how to record financial transactions in different ways, generate financial statements, create financial statements with it, so you know how those financial statements are actually built and how financial transactions relate to it. And then managerial accounting, which takes that financial data, including financial statements and other financial data as well as non-financial data, to help make decisions. So in other words, the financial statements really help us to make the financial statements and know what financial transactions are, how those financial transactions are recorded and populated and accumulated, and then make the financial statements with them. Then the managerial accounting is going to take that information and be focused really on decision making, internal decision making. How can we take the data, both financial and non-financial, and put it into some format that we can make decisions with? Typically, if you're going through an accounting program, you'll learn these in order. We'll go through financial accounting, huge topic in and of itself, and then managerial accounting. Note that as we do so, you're still going to get a very broad component of these topics, meaning most of the topics that we go into in all of financial and managerial accounting is still a broad overview. Many of them are areas that we could specialize and basically spend our career in terms of just one chapter that we cover in financial accounting or managerial accounting. So these would be the broad overview steps. How does this information help us if we are an accounting student looking to supplement our resources, or if we're a non-accounting student looking for accounting resources in order to learn accounting for our own skills, for our own career? One way is that this knowledge will help us to plan out into the future. If we're a student, we could know what is expected in the future, and we could look for resources to start to study this material before we get there, which is really advantageous because most schools put a lot of information, probably more than can really be absorbed, into a certain semester, a certain course, and the time frame that is allocated to it. Therefore, it would be good to supplement those resources if possible, to get more resources that might make it easier to learn the material during the course, and also to supplement that information and get a head start learning that material before taking the course. One way to do that is to just take a look at the standard textbook that would be used in most accounting programs. To do that, we just look at the major publishers, the publishers that most schools will use. If we look at the texts from those major publishers, we'll note that they will be very similar. And we can think about the major publishers as probably the largest: McGraw-Hill, Pearson, and Cengage. Most schools will be using one of these three publishers for their accounting program, for their accounting resources. And you might say, well, I don't know which one it is. Maybe they use multiple publishers. That's okay, because if you look at the major texts for the three publishers, they will be much the same. The outline, the skeleton will be much the same. You can take the text, and look at the table of contents, whether you're working in a school that has McGraw-Hill and you are working in a Cengage book. Doesn't matter all that much. You'll note that the order of the text will be much the same. So you can take basically any one of these texts, whether you are a student or not. If you are a student, it would be best to get the text of the publisher that your school is working with, and typically they will be working with one of the largest publishers and sticking with that one throughout. However, they may bounce around from school to school, so you probably want to pick the publisher that applies to that particular school. However, if you don't, it's still not a big problem, because when you look at the general knowledge of financial and managerial accounting, it's fairly standardized. So the outline that you will get from any of these standard accounting books will be much the same. For example, here's an outline from a Cengage book. You can just go to Amazon and look at Cengage accounting books and pick up the table of contents, which can give you an outline, a skeleton on which you can build your learning and think about going forward what you're going to need to know going forward, whether it be in school or whether it not be in school. You'll note that this goes from chapter 21 or chapter 1 to 26 chapters. That's a huge amount of material. I mean, this textbook here, and this is similar for most of the publishers, can basically encompass the entire accounting program. This will be the heart of the accounting program. So if you got the large textbook that's not broken out into sub-textbooks or smaller portions of it, the full 26 chapters could be something that would be used through the entire accounting program going through financial and managerial accounting. As you do so, then you can look at the skeleton and see, okay, what are the chapters covering, and get an idea of what will be covered. When you do that, note that each of these chapters are really covering a lot of information, and many of them are areas where an accountant could focus their entire career, could specialize. So this is a broad overview as we look at these items of things that we need to learn, the basics of them, the broad overview of them, many of them being areas that we can then focus in on more specifically and specialize. For example, inventory. We could spend our entire career on a specific type of inventory and how to track it. If we talk about accounts receivable, we could spend our entire career basically working in accounts receivable and managing the accounts receivable of large companies who owes us money. If we talk about long-term assets, same kind of concepts, accounts payable and debts, liabilities, we could spend our entire career on these areas. So of course, these topics won't go into the extreme depth of these topics. It's going to give you the general information, but that general information then is fairly standardized. What needs to be known for general accounting knowledge, fairly standardized, and you can get that basically from the skeleton, or at least an overview of what that outline is. Once you have that, then you can supplement your resources and use them to chart your own course. You can build up basically your own curriculum. You can think about what you want to do, or what's most important to you, or what order you need to learn in, or what type of resources would be best to learn these particular topics. And of course, we do have many resources. Once you do chart your course, then we do have accounting courses that apply to many of these topics. And we also have accounting courses that apply to accounting software, typically using QuickBooks. In all of our courses, we will be integrating things like Excel, electronic spreadsheets, Excel, and Google Sheets. Or at least I think all of our courses, pretty much all of our courses, slight qualifier there, but pretty much all of our courses are going to have Excel in there, and that's going to help us to see the practical component. And it's also going to help to be able to learn this information much faster. So even if you're taking a course and you want supplemental information as you currently take the course, using a course that then has Excel problems within it makes it much easier to learn, because that allows us to look at larger problems in a systematic way without having to basically hand write down all the problems. We can then test what goes on in a scientific type method by just testing some options within an Excel sheet and being able to see the transparent Excel sheet as opposed to a database program, how the Excel sheet works, what changes within it, and then get an understanding of what is going on in it. An Excel sheet allows us to do that, and we provide those as a supplement in most of our courses, if not all of them.